Hello, welcome to How to Avoid a Mr. H Free Thoughts. I'm Deandra, also Harding on all music platforms, and let's begin. On this episode of How to Avoid a Mr. H, we discussed the difficulty of somebody who's suffered from paternal abuse, like myself, or come from a heavily traumatized family, in discovering when you are holding a necessary boundary versus just cutting off everybody. I have found that I have entered a lot of toxic relationships across the board, from career to friendship and love, because of obviously my daddy issues, my daddy abuse. And what that has done to me is that I go through, and it's something that I mentioned in an episode prior, these isolation periods where I just go from the most social human being, just letting everyone enter my life that knocks on its door, to kind of cutting everyone off and everything because I'm so overwhelmed and kind of disgusted with myself for always being in these relationships where hands down I care more about the person than they care about me. I look for the person more than they look for me. I text the person and they never text back. I call, they don't. I chase, they don't. And it's almost like I give my energy away and then quietly resent that I surrounded myself with assholes, because assholes will be the first one to tell you, oh, to challenge reciprocity. If you know anybody who says, oh, why do you give if you always expect something back? That person is empty. That person is a vacuum, and that person is never going to fully respect you. A good human being that respects what others gives them is not only grateful, they are reciprocal. And I was raised in a family. I feel one of my greatest misfortunes was to be born into a mean family while having a very sweet personality. And I know, and every time I got a boundary or I learned the word no, to say no, for like, I was always told no. But when I started giving the no, that's when it was like, you're changing. You're not being as nice as you used to be. And that has made it incredibly difficult for me to understand when I'm standing up for myself and actually being selective versus a bitch, because both will look the same. And I spoke about it in a prior episode, Don't Eat Your Pizza Like That, where I was in this relationship with this guy, Dariel, we're going to call him. And I was kind of in this moment where I made him. It's so funny. It's like people are cyclical. The pendulum swings back and forth, but it's like no matter what side it lands on, it all feels the same. We could be super progressive or super conservative, and either way, everything feels closed. And I fell for Dariel because I thought I was in this relation. My father turned everything into a debate, and I was so tired of like that chess game of conversations and just everything. Why? Who? What? Where? And not being allowed to say, this guy doesn't like me, this guy is disgusted by me, this guy has already literally from the words of his mouth said he doesn't love me, and be like, oh, he's socially awkward. No, you are. You're socially awkward because you're not picking up cues, and you're in a family that is going to teach you to pick them up means you're going to end up alone. And you're in a family that's going to teach you that being alone with yourself is so bad, is so negative, because who's going to take care of you? Who's going to find the body when you accidentally choke on a grape despite the fact that you don't eat grapes? What, is your dog going to just bark and hopefully a neighbor on the 15th floor finds you? Like it's all these horrible scenarios where being alone is just so bad and unsafe versus how bad and unsafe being ill accompanied can be. Like, I was extremely lonely with my dad, and he loved that. He reveled in making me. I, one of the saddest things about looking back on my relationship with my father is how much he enjoyed making me cry, how much he loved it, how sick he was mentally. And I think now, in observing that he was mentally ill, I allow, like, he was a literal addict. Like, he had mental illness. He suffered from depression. He suffered from anxiety. You don't commit so many crimes and then just get desperate to cover them if you don't have some form of mental illness. Because it just gets to a point where, like, just don't do the crime. Don't do the sin. Don't hurt people. But you liked it. And you just didn't like that everybody knew if somebody enjoys sins, then they're definitely a sinner. And I kind of was made to accept the unacceptable and told I was being difficult or unkind when I said enough. And it kills me. It kills me because it's partly why I don't know how to have a good relationship, how to hold a good relationship, how to decipher when somebody is just having a bad day versus having a bad person. Because I was made to believe my father was always having a bad day. You know, by chance, it was a bad day, it was a bad month, it was a bad year, it was a bad life. And after a while, you do ask, but you're not allowed to make it audible. Is this just a bad person? And I hate it because sometimes it does transfer to my mom and the difficulties of our relationship, in that my father could not have been so abusive of me without her crossing some of my boundaries as the one who was claiming and ready to be protective of me, to guard me. I mean, he wiped the floor with her in terms of money, feelings, mentality, stability. And then my father would do this weird thing of destroy you, cry until you gave him a second chance, destroy you again, cry until you gave him a third chance, destroy you again, cry until you gave him a fourth chance. And then right around the fifth chance, you start saying, okay, there's a pattern here. I'm going to confront him on it. And then he would do, prove it. Prove it. And that's the thing, when you love a person, you don't think you're gathering evidence against you should be gathering evidence against someone that you love. But if you feel you need to gather evidence, it's because they don't love you. And I'm at this point in terms of restructuring my life, reframing myself, where I don't know. And I bring up my mom because one of the things that she does is, as an adult, as a child, she made me an adult. I had to grow up so fast to the point where I feel burnt out now that as I'm an adult. I'm trying to find my inner child and not feel ridiculous. You know, I'm trying to, because your inner child is where your artist lives. And I'm an artist, which is why I started Daddy Recovery. An artist is just an adult that has accepted they are a big kid. And big kids create, they play, and they don't worry about money or validation or esteem. They're too busy having the time of their life on life's swing set, on the playground, on the slide. You know, life is this giant playground. And when you have a childhood where you weren't allowed to play, you had to watch and make sure that all the adults felt good. When you become an adult and you see that nobody does that for you, including the people that raised you, it can feel so empty. It can feel isolation, like you need to isolate to consistently recuperate from all these bad interactions versus actually, I think I've said this before in Daddy Recovery, my fear in becoming too reflective of myself and my wounds is that I might lose everybody that I've ever loved. I might have to throw out everyone. And that sucks. And one of my pet peeves is I noticed, I was talking with a friend, my mother does this thing, oh, Deandra can't cook. Deandra has no taste. I have better taste than you. I cook better than you. I drive better. You never drive. All these basic things I wasn't allowed to fully learn or excel at. And I excelled at singing and acting because my mother can't sing, my mother can't act. And it was like, well, if I can't do it, permission to excel. And sometimes I have a really hard time knowing if, despite the fact that she loves me, whether or not she actually likes me. And I say that because I've reached a point where I'm looking back at my paternal relationship, at how many times my father said, I don't like you. Like, towards the end, he said, I don't love you, because I was raised in a family where you can love the people you don't like. And love was always greater. Like, you could dislike somebody and still love them. So it was almost like this permission, this veiling of I hate you by saying I love you, but I dislike you. You know, it makes it sound like we can work on this. There's still a bridge to our connection. I'm not that bad of a person if I dislike my kid, but I love them. And it is a red flag when somebody made you an adult when you were a child, but made you a child when you were an adult, infantilized you. And part of my fear with that is it took me so long, so much pain, that even now I feel it. Because I look back, my father disrespected me in every corner of this earth. And I'm reclaiming my power by acknowledging it. But then I cross into my mother's territory. And it's like, no way was I orphaned. No way was I alone. No way did I raise myself despite having two parents. But if I don't accept that that's my truth, how far will I really go with this healing? How far will I really go in actually learning how to choose better people to love me? How to choose people that love me? How to love people that love me? Because I don't want to make acceptable the unacceptable. Because that, it's almost like there's trigger warnings. Oh, why do you always want to, don't, like, these are let's end this with trigger phrases. If he says nobody's perfect, it's because he's deeply imperfect. Because these are things my father would say. If he says, oh, you always do things to get things back. Of course, it's called interactions. You say hello and you expect somebody to say hello. If they don't say hello to you, it says something about them. They're not welcoming. Automatic. Sorry. Or they didn't hear you. Partially deaf. Automatic. Sorry. Let's think of another good warning phrases. If you notice that they're always saying, oh, I'm better than you. You don't drive well. You don't dress well. You don't eat well. If every little minutia that you do, basic human things, people ride bikes, people eat, people, just things that aren't that heavy. People dress how you want. And they say all those minutia. You don't do well, but they do better. Red flag, they are competing with you. They are using you lowering you to make you feel better. And my question in my journey is, the difference between compromising and understanding that people aren't always going to be at their best, but they're still genuinely good, versus somebody who's never at their best, was never really at their best with you, and accepting they're not your good. Ugh, that's so hard. That was from the chest. Check out daddyrecovery.com. Check out deandrewviewsitall.com, and let's do this. Let's heal. Hardin out.